If you have PCOS and you're struggling to get pregnant and you really want to get to the root cause of what's keeping you from having the family of your dreams, then this is the podcast for you and you are in exactly the right place. Welcome to the PCOS Fertility Health Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Angela Potter. I am an integrative PCOS fertility doctor, helping women like yourself to get to the root cause of your fertility struggles and turn those around so you have the very best chance at getting pregnant with PCOS. Today, I have a very special treat for you. I have an amazing guest on, and we are going to talk about how to fertility journey proof your relationship. And I have got to tell you that Rosanne is going to give you valuable tips that you will walk away from breathing a deep breath of relief. You will know how to approach your partner in how to talk about these difficult conversations when you're going through the fertility journey. And you will feel like you know how to tap into your feminine. Really amazing conversation here. Now, Rosanne is the person to listen to about this, okay? She is a 3-time best-selling author, and she's the creator of the Fearlessly Fertile Method. She is a former California state prosecutor turned fertility mindset mentor, all through her own journey where she had to figure out her own fertility, and she finally got pregnant and had her beautiful son at the age of 44. She helps women get and stay pregnant by teaching them to think, believe, and take action like a fertility success. So get ready for this wonderful conversation. Before we dive into that, be sure to subscribe here so that you stay updated on all the new fertility episodes that are coming your way. If you are committed to getting to the root cause of your fertility struggles, then listening to today's episode and upcoming episodes are going to be really important for you. Let's dive into the conversation that Rosanne and I had all about how to navigate your relationship and how to improve your communication with your partner. Rosanne, hello. Welcome to the PCOS Fertility Health Podcast. I am thrilled that you have joined us today.
Well, thank you for having me, Dr. Angela. It's really exciting, and I think we're going to have a great conversation.
Yes, because we are talking about this whole relationship piece about fertility, and that is something that I haven't even covered on the podcast. So I'm super excited to get your insights and then to be able to share it with my community, because I think this is going to be really valuable. It's heartbreaking. It's so hard to be navigating this about your own body, and then also with this person that you're going through life with.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, you are an expert in this. Can you share with the listeners kind of what brought you on this journey?
It's interesting. Necessity is the mother of invention, as they say. So
Yes.
I was a prosecutor for about 10 years in California. So I was the lead trial attorney in a specialized sexual assault unit. And around that time, my husband, who was also in law enforcement, we decided that we wanted to start our family. And I just figured, I'm a lovably type A, control freaky professional woman, Dr. Angela. There's not a challenge that I haven't met, that I haven't crushed. And I don't say that with hubris. I say it because I'm a hard worker.
Yeah.
And the reality is that I just thought that getting and staying pregnant was going to be as simple as us just picking a date. We have some lovely time together, and then we find out we're having a baby, and then the rest is history.
Mm-hmm.
But that isn't exactly what happened. What started off as, hey, let's start our family, really led to a 7-year odyssey. And we were struggling at every turn. And at that point, I was in my, I guess you would say, mid to late 30s. And I had heard through the grapevine that getting pregnant later in life was going to be harder. But I just figured, I'm young, I'm healthy, I'm fit, I take good care of myself. This is going to be simple.
Mm-hmm.
But we found ourselves, years and years deep into treatments, diets, lotions, potions. I was being treated at a top 10 teaching hospital. Yeah. Nobody could figure out what was going on. And the whole time I was like, wait a second, I'm doing everything they tell me to do. It's not like I was some recalcitrant patient who is fighting at every turn. You tell me to stand on my head, I'm standing on my head. Okay. Like that's exactly what I'm going to do. You tell me not to let gluten, dairy, sugar, joy, pass my lips. I'll avoid it. But what was interesting about this is that I hadn't fully appreciated that the mind and body work together and that my environment mattered, my stress level mattered, truly at a deeper level, how I was taking care of myself. That's kind of how I got into this, because I started looking around and I'm like, well, what is not healthy? What is out of sync? What seems the antithesis of calling in a baby into my life? And that was the way that I was thinking and the way that I was operating in my relationship, the way I was managing my stress at work. I was going from preliminary hearings to having to go to watch forensic interviews with child, sexual abuse victims. I mean, like, duh, that it wasn't working out for me, right? Like the cortisol was crazy high. But alongside this, I also saw that there were things that were happening to my relationship. And so all of this to say, I started working on the mindset piece of the fertility puzzle. And when I did that, I got pregnant for the first time. Now, I didn't carry that baby to term, but that was our last set of embryos from our last round of IVF. And I was like, I couldn't believe the impact that I could have. I was like, wow, the one thing that was different in all of this, and I was pregnant, was me.
Wow.
So even though I didn't carry that baby to term, what it woke up in me was that I could be different. And by me being different, I could help support a different outcome. And so that's, how I started studying mindset. I started working with women all over the world, sharing with them what I learned. And then I got and stayed pregnant naturally, and had my son at almost 44. So yeah, so it was crazy. And I learned a lot in this process, especially about relationships, which often gets thrown by the wayside because we just figure we have to buckle down. Let's just get through this process. We'll fix our relationship when the baby's here.
Right. You're not sleeping.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly correct. And it's funny because I think as women who are wired for achievement, we kind of figured, okay, you know what? I'm a hard worker. Let me just gut this out. And then let me fix the mess when I get there, when I get to this destination.
Yeah.
But what I saw, not only with myself, but I see with my ladies all over the world, is we will get stuck in this trap where, no, you don't know if your relationship is going to make it if you keep acting that way, right? Or if you keep stressing each other out. So long-winded answer, but I figured it was necessary to kind of put this into some context about why and how I know what I know.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. I mean, what a journey you've been on. And as, we share our own stories, more people can feel like they aren't alone. So thank you for all this work that you're doing. Let's dive into some of the juiciness about relationships during the fertility journey. What are top 3 challenges that you see really clear in relationships when couples are struggling trying to conceive?
Ooh, that's a good question. So I think the first challenge is not having a clear vision, a cleared, shared vision. So here's what I mean by that is a lot of times we just assume that if we're in a relationship, we're all on the same page. And that's not necessarily true. We might be in the same chapter. We might be somewhere on the same page, but maybe not even in the same paragraph. And I hear a lot of women in turmoil and experiencing a lot of stress in their relationships because they want to move forward with something, but their partner may not. And so I think it's an indicator of a lack of communication. So it's sort of lack of shared vision, AKA communication. And I think a lot of people find themselves on this journey, and the first thing we do is we go into chaos. We go into panic. Oh my gosh, this dream of becoming a mom, this is not happening. So we immediately go into fix it mode. We go into damage control. We go into those things without stopping and sitting with our partner and saying, hey, we're facing a challenge right now. Let's take 10, 15 minutes to just sit together and let's create a shared vision for how we want to approach this challenge that has shown up in our lives. It sounds so adult, doesn't it, Dr. Angela? Like, it sounds so adult when we put it that way, but I think it's one of the things that pops up is we don't sit down and actively war game out like how we want to approach this challenge.
Well, I love that because that's such a powerful, specific question that really brings both people just right to that goal. And like, how do we want to get there? And then you two are talking about it together. We're not like going off on, tangents, talking about anything else. It's just like straight to the point. We've got to sit down and talk about this. That's powerful.
Yeah. And another issue that I see come up in relationships is people are not honest about what they're afraid of. So, and I see this playing out in a lot of different ways. So let me give you a couple of examples. So this journey obviously takes us into a lot of different directions. It's challenging personally. It can be challenging professionally, especially if you're a professional woman out trying to straddle the line between fertility treatments, doctor's appointments, and then holding down a potentially very stressful job. And we're also trying to interact with our partner who probably has their own set of fears. And I think that having honest conversations about what scares you or what concerns you about this journey can be really helpful to people because we, as much as this journey is a shared experience for couples, it's also a deeply individual one, deeply personal. And a lot of these things, a lot of the challenges that we face, whether it's recurrent miscarriage, whether it's having to move from natural conception into assisted reproductive technology, or, other phases in the journey, it can definitely awaken some of our deepest held fears. That maybe we're not worthy, maybe we're not lovable, maybe we aren't worth it. Sometimes, as women, we have a difficult time receiving. So, we're not conditioned to be great takers. We're conditioned to be great givers. And I think it really causes a lot of turmoil. And when we have a partner, they're going through a similar set of experiences. So it's really important, in addition to having a shared vision, like we talked about in the first point, the second point would be, let's be honest about what we're afraid of, right? And talk it through, because a lot of people hold, that fear. I mean, some people, one of the biggest triggers for them is financial. Like, oh my gosh, we're going to have to invest in calling in a baby when everyone else does it for free, right? And that can bring up old, deep-seated fears about lack and scarcity, and also self-worth. That's another thing that I see, is that, another problem is just we're not honest about what scares us about this journey.
Wow. Yeah. That, and for women, so often it's the woman or the one who's wanting to hold the baby that's going in to get all of these medical appointments and all of that. She holds on to a lot of that. And so I can see how powerful that is to be open, both people in the process, to talk about, well, what are these fears? Because it's the two people together.
Right. Right. And then the third thing that I really notice that comes up is we just completely neglect, even within the relationship, our own self-care. We start not taking care of ourselves. We keep subordinating our own needs to some other, thing, whether it's our commitments at work, whether it's our commitments to each other. But each partner in a relationship can find themselves like just giving to the point that they are completely depleted. And it sounds kind of counterintuitive, but you have both of these well-intentioned people giving until they can't give anymore. And then they find themselves exhausted, depleted, and asking themselves why they're even on this journey. And so I think really when you take a look at these three things in succession and you really look at what they stand for is really an invitation for couples to just take a minute and act like adults, which is kind of funny, right? Instead of allowing our fear to distract us or our internal monologue that may be well-intentioned but warped, but to like sit down and really come together, talk about the fears, what are our goals, and how can we lovingly encourage each other to take care of ourselves as individuals, so that when we do come together, when we have our appointments, when we have conversations, we're not coming from a place of exhaustion, which leads to conflict and goes down a really dark road.
Which leads really lovely into a question of, what makes this struggle with fertility different than other relationship challenges that any relationship would have?
That's a good one too. And it's it's part and parcel to something I had said earlier, where as much as this is a shared experience, it's also a deeply personal one. And I think that this journey really elicits within us some of our deepest held core wounds. And, we find ourselves in a situation where sometimes no matter what we do, we can't make this thing work. And so if we have a poor relationship with making mistakes, or if we have, old belief systems from our childhood that says that we're not enough, and that if we're not perfect, and if we're not getting straight A's, and in the fertility world, if we're not producing great quality eggs and getting pregnant exactly as our doctor predicted, that we're failing. And so what it does is on the outside, objectively, it's a negative pregnancy test. But on the inside, what we're really saying is, I'm a mess. I'm not lovable. And so you can see how otherwise reasonable people will take something that's objectively neutral. A negative pregnancy test is just a negative pregnancy test. If we're able to strip the emotion away from it and the story, and we just say it's a negative pregnancy test, but you can go from negative pregnancy test to I'm going to die alone, eaten by wild dogs, it just goes from 0 to 60 really, really quickly. But that's because it really hits at the core of our deepest wounds, because professionally it's fairly linear, right? Like you go to law school, you go to medical school, you do number of hours, you pass, whatever board certifications or bar exam, you're going to get a job, right? It's more linear. This is not. And so it's less predictable. And when it causes us to face the uncertain, what is it that the uncertainty calls up in us? Our basic fears and our basic sense of survival. So that's what makes this so different, because, when you're out dating, you're like, there'll be other fish in the sea, but with this, it hits at the core. And the other thing is, I think a lot of people take this as a fairly biological basic. You take an egg and you take a sperm, you put them together, you have a baby, but it's not that simple. So yeah, it pulls up a lot of our old baggage.
Let's move into talking really specifically about PCOS. So how can women who are struggling with PCOS, trying to grow their families, get their baby, how can they help their partner and improve communication in their relationship as they're going through this journey?
That's a really good question. I think, as with any diagnosis, one of the smartest things that a woman can do when being given that diagnosis is to take a deep breath and to remember that as a thinking, sentient being, she gets to decide what anything in her life means. So certainly, if you've been given this information that based on the tests and, all of the diagnostic procedures that you have PCOS, is remember that women with PCOS have babies every day. Okay. It happens all the time.
Yes.
And to not wear the jacket, as I call it, of your diagnosis. It's part of your life, but it's not the end of your life. What it's presenting you with is a set of facts that you will now need to take into consideration in your own healthcare. Do you notice, Dr. Angela, there's a softness about this? There's a softness and openness that, hey, okay, I have this set of facts. Now I just need to learn how to navigate this. I mean, I have clients that come to me with that diagnosis, and I have one client of mine who's got 3 kids now, perfectly healthy. Okay. And so just take the information, but don't make it an identity, and be careful about what you make that diagnosis mean. That's like the first thing. The second thing, so once she takes care of it within herself, okay, notice what I've just done. It's not about running to your partner immediately and, oh my gosh, I have PCOS. No, take care of it within you first. Get right with it within you first. And then when you present this to your partner and you say, I learned this from Dr. Angela today. This is what I found out. And so these are some of the things that I've become aware of that we need to address. And I would love your help and support with that, right? And it's more like, because if your partner is always looking to you to set the tone, especially if it's something going on with you. So if you go to your partner in a panic, your partner is going to be like, oh my gosh, my partner's in pain. Let me jump in. And they'll meet your fear with their fear if you're not careful. So, and this is like, now I want to be clear about something, Dr. Angela. I'm not saying that it's a woman's responsibility to get her partner on board. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is, hey, get right with you. And then when you get right with you on what's come up, present it to your partner. Okay. And the other thing is, you can't necessarily make them understand. It's you that has PCOS, right? Not them. So the experience for them is always going to be different, right? Shared, but personal. Remember that from the very beginning. It's a shared experience, but everybody's having a personal experience within that. So your partner may have questions, and you may not be in a position to explain all of the intricacies of PCOS. Dr. Angela can, but you can't. But this is an invitation for them to just get educated. And I like to send a signal, to my partner. I mean, my husband, whenever I was telling him things, I'm like, hey, we're going to figure this out. I just want you to know what's going on, because sometimes our partner wants to jump in and fix everything, but it's not necessary. We're going to go on this journey together. But that's what I would encourage women to, like, when you have this diagnosis, get clear with you about how you feel about it. Get whatever education you need, and then present it to your partner. It's so much simpler, and your energy is so much more calm, even if you have questions, right? But that gives them a baseline, because our partner is going to mirror our energy.
Wow. It takes away so much of the anxiety around PCOS when you present it that way. Just getting clear on it yourself. And you know this, I know this, like, PCOS has so many symptoms, and people experience PCOS in so many different ways that there's no way to just say, well, this is everybody's experience with PCOS. To get right with yourself first, and then to be presenting it with your partner, that's going to change that trajectory so much. And of course, women who have already been diagnosed, they're kind of in that very highly emotional state of the fertility journey. There's still time to turn that around, right? To be changing the way that they're showing up to talk about it with their partner.
100%. I mean, it's part of, what I describe in my most recent book, The Feminine Fertility Cure, is the feminine leadership, right? As women, one of the coolest things that we have in our arsenal of awesomeness is that we can be feminine leaders. Like, we can lead from our feminine, and our feminine is about openness. It's about curiosity. It's about softness. It's about nurturing and spirituality. And it's like, when we can take that and take care of ourselves first, take this information that we're being given, process it, and share with our partner, it positions us to take the stress level way down. And what a little tool that I would encourage your listeners to consider is to, if you come home from your doctor and they say, okay, we have a diagnosis of PCOS. One of the things that you can say if your partner is curious or says, oh, how did going to see Dr. Angela? How was that? What you could say if you're still processing this information, I mean, luckily your patients have you and they have a kind and they have a nurturing physician and partner in this that, nobody's going to run out of there with their hair on fire. You're going to take good care of them. But that if you're still processing and your partner asks you, one thing that you could say is, hey, babe, yeah, I had a great appointment with Dr. Angela today. There's some things that she shared with me that I'm still working out for me. Can I share with you tomorrow or the day after? It's nothing to be afraid of. I'm not dying, not anytime soon. But I just want to, process a few things and then we can come back to that question.
And that just sets them up for then the next day to come to that conversation, probably in a very level-headed way after having thought about it for so long.
Yeah. And, taking that approach is really about self-care. It's like, okay, let me figure out where this is at first. Mm-hmm. And then let me share that with my partner. I mean, the other alternative, if somebody is wanting to share with their partner immediately, which is fine too, right, is to just say, okay, some things are going to be coming out of my mouth. I am a little confused. And frankly, I'm a little scared. So the way that I'm going to describe this to you may be a little jumbled. It might be not how I feel tomorrow, but can I share it with you as is? And that's kind of cool too. Is like
that you can use in so many different kinds of situations. I'm going to use that one.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's like, I say that to my husband all the time. Like if there's something that I'm working on or some piece of information that I don't know what I want to do with yet, I'll just be like, hey, babe, this is going to come out cuckoo. And I'm totally responsible for that. But I just want you to witness what's happening for me right now. I may feel differently about this tomorrow. And the reason why I like that is because number one, you're owning where you're at. Mm-hmm. You are not allowing your self-sabotage pattern from old childhood wounds to have you go into perfectionism, apologize for who you are, or make up stuff about what you're going through. It's completely honest. And I think that kind of honesty and that kind of transparency with a level of personal responsibility just allows us to express to our partner, take full responsibility for, it might be a little messy, but it also brings a little bit of lightness to it, right? And says, I have the right to change my mind. I may be better about this tomorrow, but here's where I'm at, right? So, I mean, that's my thought on it.
Yes. And, I love a couple minutes ago, you started talking about like feminine side of conversations and kind of returning to that feminine side. Can you talk with us a little bit more, Rosanne, about what that means and how does that look in the context of relationships? How can we start that return to that feminine side?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I devoted the significant part of last year and this year pouring that into that book I mentioned, The Feminine Fertility Cure. And it's funny because over 10 years in my practice, like I have seen women who are stuck in what I call man mode. And it's this, and look, this is not about gender stereotypes. It's really about our energy. We're all made up of masculine and feminine energy. Everyone has it. It says nothing about your gender or anything like that. It's just the masculine is the doer in us. The masculine gets the job done, is the fighter, is the part of us that needs to be right. It's all of those things. It's the structure in our lives. The feminine, on the other hand, is the creative, the spiritual, the nurturing, the curious, the part of us that can sit in a question without having an answer, right? Because by contrast, you look at the masculine, it wants the job done. It needs the answer now. And both of these sides of us have equal value. The masculine side is not better than the feminine. The feminine is not better than the masculine. They have their place. It's really about women learning to marshal these sides of ourselves so that we can get it to a place of personal mastery where, when I'm working on a book, Dr. Angela, I might be in masculine mode because I've got a deadline.
Yeah.
but I will be engaging my feminine that's the creative and that is that unique voice in me. So these things play together. And when it comes to, PCOS or any other diagnosis that we have on this journey, a lot of times we'll go straight to the masculine and want to fix it, crush it, make it better. And that's the masculine. But the feminine is what I was modeling earlier about, okay, I have this information. I want to process it. Let me get back to you. Or, hey, this may come out a little messy, but this is where I'm at. It's the part of us that nurtures the truth of where we are and isn't trying to make it something else. It can sit with where we're at. And so it's interesting because when a woman can tap back into her feminine, doesn't feel the pressure to be perfect, isn't punishing herself because of her diagnosis, is making sure she gets enough sleep, has the right treatment team, is educating herself about lifestyle that, in a way that is going to support her having healthy pregnancy and managing her PCOS symptoms. That's deeply feminine. Giving to ourselves, Dr. Angela, is deeply feminine. And so when we nurture that part of ourselves, we will see opportunities, we will see circumstances that we couldn't see before because we were so stuck in doing, forcing, making things happen, needing to be right, and being overly structured and punishing ourselves. So that's how those two things work. And really, to get to the last part of your question is, how do we begin? How do we re-engage that feminine side, especially in a society where we are so rewarded for being in man mode,
Right.
coming back to the feminine? I mean, look, I know medical school was no joke, right? I mean, there's probably not a lot feminine about medical school, just like law school. I mean, law school was all about the masculine, right? And that's, so for those of us that, especially as professionals, I think the first step is asking a deceptively simple question. And it's the world's most annoying question. My clients know me for it, but it's inherently feminine, is, what do you want? Said another way, what do you desire in this moment? And when we can ask that question and not what we think we can get, but what do we want? Like, so for a woman maybe who comes into your office and says, no, I have these symptoms, and you go through, you work your magic, and then you uncover, yes, indeed, you have PCOS. So a woman in that moment, to take care of herself, can ask herself, what do I want in this moment? Maybe the answer is peace. Maybe the answer is more education. Maybe the answer is to shrink Dr. Angela down and carry her around in my pocket all day so that I don't get scared. I don't know, whatever the case may be. But to really be present with yourself and ask, what do I want? Not what do I need? Okay, need, I don't like to use that word because it's a suggestion of lack. I don't like that. And I don't think women are needy. We have desires. And need is like a judgment. So what is it that I want right now? What do I desire? And it might just be, hey, I might want to take a few minutes and just sit, give myself some peace, give myself some silence. And once a woman starts to get reacquainted with what it is that she desires, she is necessarily entering the realm of the feminine, because so many of us were taught from childhood that what we wanted was too much. It's too complicated. That's silly. Nobody becomes a ballerina, or whatever, whatever the case may be. I wanted to be somewhere between a vet and a ballerina. I ended up going to law school. I don't know what that has to do with anything, but it's giving yourself the chance to stop and, what do I want? And I think that's the way that a woman is going to start that extremely powerful question, to start to tap back into her feminine.
Rosanne, I mean, you have shared these so eloquently and so straight to the point. And then, by the end of your thought, it's like my mind is blown. And I'm like, I have to take some serious thought here on my own life.
Well, I think that's so cool. I mean, hey, here's the thing. Like, we often teach what we most need to learn, right? I think it's beautiful. It shows an incredible amount of humility and excitement and feminine energy, Dr. Angela, that you're even like taking a second to consider it. It's a wonderful thing for women consistently, whether they have PCOS or some other diagnosis, to go back to their feminine, because the feminine part of you knows that you can have what you want. The feminine knows that you can heal, and the feminine holds the highest regard for who we are as individuals. So it's a super powerful and heartbreakingly underutilized aspect of ourselves, especially for women today.
Right. I mean, you're right. We are taught from such a young age just to really shovel those desires and that soft side of us aside. And so to be turning back to that and retraining ourselves on how to use that in the midst of being in a fertility journey, it's something that takes a minute to try to put those pieces together. But when you're able to take that breath, to take that moment to, think what your needs are or what this diagnosis means to you before going to your husband or your partner, and how that then opens up this opportunity for so much growth and change in your relationship, in the grace that you give your own body, which then, reduces that stress and anxiety on your own self and in this journey. I mean, these are little pieces that you have given us that then create this huge ripple effect in so many areas of life. So thank you.
Oh, yeah, no, and I appreciate it. And I actually super quick want to raise a point, because you brought something up that's really, really smart. And it goes to kind of our partner's reaction. I think women need to remember, you exercised good judgment when you called in your partner. Okay. Whoever you married, whoever you're partnered up with, you probably made a good choice, mama. Well done. Okay. But that person can't take care of us in the way that we deserve to be taken care of if they don't know what to do. And when you stop and take a moment and say, what do I want? Then you are evoking information within you to come out about what you truly desire, so that you can in turn share that information with your partner so they can be part of what you want, right? The support that you want. Like, people can't help us if they don't know how to help us. And by women taking even a couple minutes with that inquiry and say, what do I really want right now? Like, what is peace? Let's say if your answer is peace, okay, well, how can I get some of that? Well, maybe I'm going to ask my husband to, be in charge of dinner all week or something. I'm just making that up. Or maybe I'm going to ask my partner to come with me to my next appointment, because as I get educated, they get educated. It's those little things. And because your partner, I really want to encourage women to remember this, your partner loves you. Your partner wants to be with you. And a lot of the miscommunication that happens on this journey, because the information is intense and the experience is intense, is because both of you just don't know what to do. You have good intentions, but everyone's confused. I don't want to assume this, or I don't want to do that. It's like, this is why we stand up in our adult, shoes and say, hey, this is what I want. This is what I would like to have from you. And then nobody's confused, right? We can have some clear communication. And I think it empowers us. This is why the feminine is so powerful, is that it gets us in touch with what we need, and we thereby empower our partner to help meet those, desires and wants. And then everyone's a lot happier because your partner's not confused about how they can love you. And you actually get what you want. So it's great. It's a win-win.
Completely. Yes. Well, Rosanne, we've been talking here for maybe, almost an hour now. We could go on and on. So please, I'm sure the listeners are wondering, like, I need to know how to get more information from Rosanne. How do I get access to her books? How do I learn more from her? Please share with us.
Yeah. Well, so one of the first ways for people to super easily find me and learn more about this insanity that I embark on is the Fearlessly Fertile podcast. So we have over 300 episodes now, and so I've been at this for a while. But that's a great way to get like the immediate hit of like, there's a 3-part series I do on the feminine. So if they're curious about that, they can go check that out. That's available on wherever podcasts are found on any platform. The other option is I have written 4 books. So my books are readily available on Amazon if they want to check them out. The first one is Am I the Reason I'm Not Getting Pregnant? The Fearlessly Fertile Method for Clearing the Blocks Between You and Your Baby. And my most recent is The Feminine Fertility Cure. So you can't go wrong. Check them out if they call to you. And the other option is to check me out on Instagram. I'm very active on Instagram at Rosanne Austin Fertility, and they'll see all kinds of cool stuff. And I like to chat with the ladies all the time. So it's a great place to get a boost of confidence and fearlessness on their fertility journey. So that's where to find me.
I love that. Well, I will include those links in the show notes so people can get access to those very quickly. And then, Rosanne, can you share just what's a word or a thought of hope for those women who are listening, who have PCOS, who are in the middle of a heartbreaking fertility journey? What is a word of hope that you have for them in regards to their relationship? And if that's another thing that they feel like is just falling off the line, what's some words for them?
That's so good. Well, so first of all, I would really encourage women to go to the core of this, is that PCOS is a piece of information. It's not a verdict. And that harkens back to my days as a prosecutor, but it's not a verdict. I would encourage them to really claim their own authority. They get to be the leaders of their own life and lead in their own diagnosis and manage that in a way that comes from a feminine, authoritative place, and believing that the desire in their heart to be a mom is there because it was meant for them. We don't know when they're going to become a mom. We don't know how they're going to become a mom. But if the desire is in them, it must be for them. So reclaim your authority. Have a great team around you like Dr. Angela, and move forward as if this is happening for you, not to you. Because I did not struggle with PCOS, but so many of my clients have. And so many of them found that the lifestyle changes, the adjustments they've made in their life were actually for the better. So sometimes our diagnosis, it's actually a gift in some ways where your life can become better. And when you take that stance on your position with your diagnosis, then you can take it with your partnership. And I bet that a lot of women, part of the reason why this becomes so stressful is because they approach this with so much fear. And that creates confusion and disruption in the relationship. But the other part of that is when you become your own feminine authority, that means that you set the tone and tenor of your relationship. Just remember, your partner loves you. They want to be there for you, and help them help themselves for you to get there. Like, really approach this from a place of love. Lead PCOS with love. How about that?
Rosanne, you are a feminine powerhouse, and myself and anyone who is listening to this episode is walking away from it a better person. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your love and your support in this podcast. Thank you for being here with us.
Well, thank you for having me, Dr. Angela. It was a great conversation. You're fantastic. And I really am delighted and excited for what's to come for your audience. So thanks for having me.
Would you agree with me that Rosanne is one of those gems, that she just drops these truth bombs and such tangible information that you can be using today to start turning around stressful conversations, stressful situations that you're having with your partner, because you've been in this journey for years. You've been trying to get pregnant for years, and that has created some strife between you and your partner. And so now you can use these tools that Rosanne has shared with you to start turning things around, because yes, your partner loves you and is on this journey with you. Join me and Rosanne over on Instagram. Come over and tell us which of the tips that you were able to implement and how it went with you and your partner. We would love to hear from you. I am delighted that you heard from Rosanne today. Be sure to check out her books, her podcast, and the resources. Those are all linked below. And as a reminder, as we wrap up here today, that this information is just that. It's information on this podcast, and it shouldn't replace the information that you are getting from your doctor. If you want to support this podcast, you can leave a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts. And if no one else has told you this today, I want to be the one to tell you that I believe in you, and I believe in your ability to figure out the root cause of what's keeping you stuck and to turn that around so that you have the very best chance at getting pregnant with PCOS. I'll see you right back here next Wednesday.